Hello, this is Archie Dunlop with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, April the 25th, 2023. I've just noticed that Australian comedian Barry Humphreys has died at the age of 89. You probably know more about him than me, but just in case, he was incredibly famous, certainly in Britain and Australia, I think in the United States as well. He had a long career. He was connected with just about everyone in comedy. And of course, he's most famous for Dame Edna. Dame Edna was this persona he brought to life, and she was almost a separate person aside from him. That's kind of quite extraordinary that you can create someone like that. I mean, I myself, I don't really watch much television, and I haven't watched television for decades, but I always knew that she was a mainstay. Dame Edna and of course Barry Humphreys were mainstays of British television. So I think it would be useful to look at his horoscope. I also want to look at the date of his death, April 22nd, because it's one of those cases where a beginner astrologer might actually have had a better chance of predicting his death than someone more seasoned, because when you become a more seasoned astrologer, you start to realize that things don't work as well as they should do. But a beginner astrologer, or enthusiastic about particular transits, especially involving Saturn, might have piled in and said, oh yeah, he was going to die then, and they probably would have been right. So I will show you how it would have been really easy to predict his death using very simple techniques. Anyway, let's look at his horoscope. So as you can see, he's got Pisces rising. Now, if you are in the southern hemisphere, Pisces is the most common rising sign, because the signs of the zodiac do not rise at the same speed. And in the southern hemisphere, Pisces is a slow riser. In the northern hemisphere, Pisces is the rarest rising sign. Anyway, he had Pisces rising, he had Mars in Pisces, he had Mercury in Pisces. And I think it's quite fitting. Pisces is a very flexible sign. It can move from one thing to another. And so being able to move from one persona to another, being able to imitate, being able to change one's appearance, being able to become Dame Edna, the Australian housewife, and to adopt her persona, and for people to see this supposed woman on stage and to be able to completely separate it off from the man behind it. Yeah, that's obviously an incredible talent, and I'm sure that's got a lot to do with the Pisces rising. Now, with the sun in Aquarius, it's someone who is quite independent, who has their own way of doing things. But it shouldn't be forgotten that the sun it's not very well placed in Aquarius. In fact, Aquarius, all things being equal, is the worst sign for the sun to be in, because the sun rules Leo, therefore it's in its detriment in the opposite sign of Aquarius. So maybe in a way this is a good thing. If you want to be different people, you don't want to have a very strong sun, perhaps, because you want to be able to ditch one personality, move into something else, and having too much of an ego may actually be a disadvantage. So that's how perhaps the Aquarius and the Pisces mix together. Now, it's interesting that he has Mars in Pisces opposition Neptune in Virgo. Mars in the first house, opposition Neptune in the seventh house. So how would that manifest? Well, Neptune is all about make-believe. It's all about being someone you're not. And Mars is where you put your energy, where you put your assertiveness. If you're a man, and he was a man, he wasn't a woman, he wasn't Dame Edna, he was Barry Humphreys underneath it all. Pisces, he puts his energy into that flexibility, and it's opposite Neptune, which perhaps must have really helped him move from one personality to another. But there was a dark side to that, because I believe in the 1960s he had serious alcohol problems. I mean, his alcohol problems were so bad they could have killed him. And so there is a good indicator of alcoholism. Mars, where he's putting his energy, he can't find anywhere to put his energy. It hits Neptune, and so Neptune is a planet of alcohol. So that fits really well. Fortunately, he was able to give up alcohol. I think he became a teetotaler. And then I suppose he was able to transform the energy of a Mars-Neptune into his stage career. Now, as far as his death is concerned, it's really very simple, you could say. There we go. There's his ascendant, 4:35 Pisces. Where was Saturn when he died? This was the day he died. It was at 4:43 Pisces. So he died when Saturn was exactly on his ascendant. Now, normally we survive Saturn crossing our ascendant, and it just happens. It's a one-day wonder. But I suppose in this case, he was in hospital having, I believe, surgery. He'd had a fall in February. He'd been hospitalized, I think, in March. So he was in a weakened position. So if you had known he was in hospital, and you had known that Saturn was on his ascendant, and you just started learning astrology and you knew about ascendants and transits, you might have said he's never going to come out of hospital. And that is indeed the case. So I think that, I don't know whether he had to be in hospital, but you probably wouldn't want to be in hospital when Saturn is exactly on your ascendant if you're 89 years old. So that's the first indication of him dying that I think a new astrologer might have picked up on. Someone like me probably would have said, yeah, it happens all the time, Saturn on the ascendant, it's no big deal. The other indicator is the solar return. Now, the solar return is the moment the sun returns to the place it was when you were born. So I'm going to show you his solar return. Now, that's a precessed solar return. This is his solar return. I've set it for his place of birth, but that doesn't really matter particularly. And this is for February the 16th, 2023. Now, he had his fall in February. I don't know what date he had his fall, whether it was before his solar return or after his solar return. But you can see at his solar return, the sun was at 2730 Aquarius. Saturn was at 2743 Aquarius. So at the time of his solar return, there was an exact Sun-Saturn conjunction. And I think that was it. I mean, it was so close that it was a bad signature. It was a sign that that he might be in trouble. But there's something even more interesting about that, which a beginner might not have picked up on. You'll notice that, assuming we have his exact birthday, I think birth time 6:30, assuming that birth time is accurate, but he really was born at 6:30 in the morning, the ascendant is at 12:25 Libra, and Saturn is at 27:43 Aquarius. Now that means it's exactly 135 degrees from the ascendant. And I keep saying these 45 degree, 135 degree aspects are really important. So he has a solar return where his ascendant is afflicted by Saturn and the Sun, and of course that Saturn-Sun it's basically he's got an exact transit to his Sun, and that is a real signature of something going wrong. And then we look back at his death chart, and Saturn was exactly on his ascendant. So we've got a repeated theme. In his solar return, he had Saturn and the Sun 135 degrees from his ascendant, and then he died when Saturn was crossing his ascendant. So I think in that situation, if I had been spending all my time looking at his chart, even though I don't regard myself as a beginner, far from it, I hope I'm not a beginner level of astrology, but I think there would have been a reasonable chance, by looking at the transit and the solar return in combination, to have actually predicted that there was a very high chance of him dying pretty much when he died. But maybe that's just hindsight. Anyway, let's move on to today's stars for Tuesday, April the 25th, 2023. You'll see that the moon is now in Cancer. Very different energy from a day or two ago when it was in Gemini. It's a time to be emotional. It's a time to think about family and security and all that kind of thing. But we can still talk because the moon is applying to a sextile aspect with Mercury. So that's free-flowing communication. But we do have to be a bit careful because the moon will eventually make a conjunction with Mars. It's going to be, if you're in New York, that will be late in the evening, early tomorrow morning if you're in Europe. So that could be a problem. Now, interestingly, that Moon-Mars conjunction is on General Zaluzhny's Sun. General Zaluzhny, he's a guy in charge of the Ukrainian armed forces, and he's a Cancerian, and he's got his Sun at 16 Cancer. And Mars is going to be on his Sun today and tomorrow, and the moon is going to be join Mars on the Sun. So we'll probably never know what happened, but if I were to be advising him, I would tell him to stay out of trouble, stay away from Zelensky, because as I've already explained, Zelensky and Zaluzhny have the astrology between the two, synastry between the two is terrible. So he should avoid his president, his commander-in-chief, or whatever Zelensky calls himself. So that would be a bit of advice for him, but of course he's not listening to me. So that's the main theme. Aries. The Aries point is on the Jupiter-Saturn midpoint. So there's Saturn, there's Jupiter, and the Aries point is right between them. What does that mean? Well, I kind of see that regard Jupiter and Saturn as being connected with the business cycle, with the way the world is unfolding, and Aries is the world at large. So I think at the beginning of this week, there's going to be a big emphasis on the economy, on markets, how the business cycle is going. If you're involved with the Federal Reserve or central banks, that Aries on a Jupiter-Saturn midpoint is going to be causing a lot of consternation and trouble. Maybe data is going to come out. Again, we might not see this data, but senior economists might see it, bankers and that kind of thing. So a lot of focus there on the global economy with Aries on the Jupiter-Saturn midpoint. And also from a political point of view, it's a lot of stress in society. Jupiter is about the need to move forward, the need to express ourselves. Saturn is about restriction. So the tension is really coming out, and I think we're going to be feeling that today, and I believe for the whole of this beginning period of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah, that Aries on a Jupiter-Saturn midpoint, I think is potentially quite major. So that is certainly something to bear in mind. Now, as far as my forecast for the 12 signs is concerned, here we go. Aries, 3 stars. It's a day for talking about money, not arguing about it. Taurus, 4 stars. Right now, you're making a lot of sense. Gemini, 4 stars. A short journey could be very useful. Cancer, 5 stars. You're in your element. After all, the moon, ruler of Cancer, is in Cancer. You're in your element, and you're also a powerful communicator. Leo, 4 stars. You're challenged to move your creative and business skills into top gear. I say that because the Sun, ruler of Leo, is currently opposition Apollon, a hypothetical planet connected with creativity and business. Virgo, 5 stars. You can meet people who expand your horizons. Libra, 4 stars. Your deep thoughts can be brought to bear on your career. Scorpio, 4 stars. You need a change of scene and perhaps a change of friends and partners. Sagittarius, only 2 stars. In many respects, you are out of your depth. Capricorn, 3 stars. Partners could surprise and even shock you. Aquarius, 3 stars. If you want to be in control, get organized. And finally, Pisces, 4 stars. You decide which game everyone plays. So, having done the astrology, I'm now going to do the I Ching reading for today. So, as usual, I throw my 3 coins in the air, write down the hexagrams, and I give you my reading for you who are watching this video. This I Ching reading, by the way, does not apply to anyone who is not watching this video. And I don't know if you're not watching it on a different day. I'm assuming you're watching it on Tuesday, April the 25th. So this is really how April the 25th is likely to occur to you. So the first hexagram I got was difficulty at the beginning, hexagram number 3. So if we're involved in something, we're going to find that it's hard work. It's not going to be easy to get things done. And in the end, we might feel as if we're banging our head against a brick wall. Okay, with a bit of effort, we might start to see some results, but I'm not convinced that those results are really going to be what we were looking for. And then difficulty at the beginning transforms into the hexagram 23, which is splitting apart, hence the picture. It's not a good hexagram. It suggests that in the end, if we want to make any progress, we're going to have to split apart. Split apart means there are things in our life, there are people in our lives that we have to split from. Because if we don't make the break, this thing which we find so difficult is going to keep on getting difficult. So if we want an easy life, then we have to work out what is holding us up. And once we realize what's holding us up, we have to distance ourselves from it. But distancing that's a rather a gradual thing, and maybe it's not a time for gradual change. Splitting apart is a dramatic break with everything holding us back. And if we can do that, then I think very soon things will start moving in our favour. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for today, and I will talk to you tomorrow.